Have you ever thought you were really familiar with something only to find out you forgot more about it than you actually remembered?
La la la, clicky keyboard noises, la la la, keyboard noises.
Yeah, apparently I did that with my comp titles when I first started querying. I was really struggling to come up with comp titles for my novels when I was first querying several months back. If you don't know what a comp title is, imagine that you're in a bookstore and your book is on a table. The books that are on that table with your book are your comp titles. Those are the books that are similar in subject matter to yours that people who, if they like your book, they'll probably also like those books. And that works the other way around. So if people are familiar with another book and you're like, my book's kind of like that, then people will be more likely to try your book out. A lot of agents in those query forms ask for comp titles now. Not all of them, but a lot of them. And it's good to know where your book stands in the marketing. And slightly supernatural like broadly qualifies as a fantasy, but more narrowly as an urban fantasy. Urban fantasy is defined by having fantastical characters like mermaids and vampires and ghosts and werewolves and all that stuff, but they're in a contemporary setting, not a fantasy one. Think Milan, not Middle Earth. They used to be called paranormal novels, but now even agents that want paranormal stories will use the broader term urban fantasy or just fantasy in general, and then they'll specify in what they're looking for that they want books that have this type of stuff in it. Buffy the Vampire Slayer and True Blood are examples of urban fantasies, and minus the sex, they're pretty good comps for what I write. I didn't want to use those comp titles though because they were not published recently. They were published in the early 2000s. And as much as I don't want to think about the fact that that was 20 years ago, it's still a fact. And the older your book is that you're using as a comp, the less likely it is that people know what book you're talking about. So when I was preparing my query packet, thinking about all the comp titles for Slightly Supernatural, all I could think about was like those books, which poses another problem. A lot of paranormal novels that came out in the early 2000s are classed as paranormal romances. First of all, I have no problem reading characters doing the horizontal mambo. In most of the books that I really enjoy have a scene or two, and sometimes I will pick out a book specifically because I do want to read some spice. I love paranormal stories and I love romances, but I really hesitated to use those books because there's no romance in Slightly Supernatural. Like later books, there's going to be some pairings up and there might be some steaminess. I don't know exactly. Like I know where the pairings that I want to do, but I don't necessarily know that I'm going to write any scenes like that. So to comp a paranormal romance book where like one of the big draws was that that happens, I didn't want to mislead anybody. I kept telling myself I can't use a paranormal romance as a comp when I don't have paranormal romance in my paranormal story. So I didn't. I remembered there was an urban fantasy series I read that didn't have romance though. Even though they had a male lead, they didn't really have much romance in them that I remembered, at least at the point where I stopped reading it anyhow. And since I didn't want to mislead anybody by saying that I had a paranormal story like the Sookie Stackhouse novels, even though there was no romance in it, I decided to use this book instead, even though it had a male lead. And then I decided that since it had been a few years since I read those books, I'd skim one or two of them the next time I was at Second and Charles if I happened to see them, just to make sure that they were good. And of course, by this point, I had already sent out a few queries using this book as one of my comps. In retrospect, I shouldn't have second guessed myself. I should have just put Sookie Stackhouse novels and Buffy the Vampire Slayer parentheses without the spice. I figure it's better for me to use a part fae waitress dating vampires as a comp than to use wizard detective who describes all women in terms of their bra size and how exotic their skin color is. Points to you if you know which book I'm talking about. It's a pretty popular series. I missed a lot of misogyny in those books. So yeah, rookie mistake. It's not the first mistake I've made. And as much as I wish it would be my last, I know better than to think I'm not going to screw up again. And I am the type of person who shows the good and the bad, as long as there's no crying involved on my part. In one of my videos, I talked about going back and checking your querying packet and making sure that it is as good as you can make it. I meant it. And that's exactly what I did. As soon as I realized that I did not want those as my book comps, I zoomed right back into that doc and fixed it and found better comps. Technically, it still could be considered a comp title because there are elements that are the same, but I would rather not compare my book to that one because to me, there's not enough comparison. Use it. Anyway, that's a fun little it happens to all of us story that I thought I'd share with you. And a reminder that if you think you are the only one making mistakes, you are not. I'm right there with you. So thanks for letting me sit here and share my face palming moment. And I hope you either learned something or at least smiled a bit at my misfortune. My name is Jennifer McPeak, and I am an unpublished author, currently querying a novel and also researching self-publishing methods because I want to be an author, and I'm going to make it happen. If you'd like to follow me on this journey, and I hope that you do, I post new videos every other Wednesday, and I talk about reading and writing and artsy craftsy stuff. Like, comment, and subscribe, and follow me on Instagram if you feel so inclined. Until then, I wish you luck in all of your endeavors, and remember, only you can prevent forest fires. Have a great day, and I'll catch you next time. Later.
La la la, clicky keyboard noises. La la la, keyboard noises.